My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic. Virtually alive and sober. I'm part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous, and again, thank the group for having me here. It's about 6-7 weeks I've been here, and a few more to go, and someone else will come in and do this. Thanks Sheldon for Martin Scorsese for doing all the work he's doing here, and I guess also most important to congratulate this group on 75 years, I think. How many? 76 years, right? Congratulations. And so my hope would be for this really cool clubhouse that the young folks who are up and coming can carry on that legacy. It's a treat to be here. June 23rd, 1988 is when loving God separated me from alcohol. Very grateful for the gifts that have been given to me on this journey over the last 36 plus years. And I've said this from a million podiums. The longer I'm sober, the older I'm getting. I'm also grateful for many of the things that God has removed from my life, mainly the things I thought I needed to be okay, which were delusional, the money, property, and prestige, which I thought would make me a better AA member, a better man, more complete. And God has removed a lot of those ideas from me, and quite frankly, sometimes money, property, and prestige from me as well. My God, will not allow anything to get in the way of a relationship with him. I'll never say God's a jealous God, because that's a human emotion, and my God is bigger than that. But when God gets space between he and I, he knows I'm in danger, and he'll remove what's ever in the way to keep me close with him and walking with him. And one of the greatest freedoms I have had, even currently, is coming to terms with that of myself I am nothing, the Father doeth the works. Coming to terms with the great need for God, the longing for God, the dependence upon God, along with Alcoholics Anonymous, which I found, my God, in the sacred rooms of AA. That when I can get on bended knees and go before my God, and some days the only thing I can give him is my sinfulness. That's the best I can offer. But in that place is, the Beatitudes talk about, a mourning for my sinfulness, which got in the way, and I paid attention to it, and it has driven a wedge between me and this power called God. And he tells me when I get to that place, I will be comforted, not punished by it. My God doesn't punish, I punish. Sin punishes sin, but God is merciful and forgiving. And I've got to experience these things on this walk. I knew nothing about this before my entrance into Alcoholics Anonymous. And quite frankly, my early days in AA, I was clueless. I felt a little bit better. I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't waking up wondering, who's next to me or where I am. I wasn't waking up in jail. I remembered everything the night before. So physically, I was starting to feel better. But emotionally and spiritually, I was bankrupt. Everything was an issue. And I would vibrate and try to pretend I'm okay around the old timers, because I thought that's what they wanted, to see that new guy like being Moses on day 7. So they would ask me, how you doing? I'm saying, I'm good. Everything's good. I'm great. And they knew I wasn't good and wasn't great. And I passed that on for many of these podiums to someone who's new, a year and under, maybe even 2 years and under, that it's really okay to tell an AA meeting that I'm not too good today. I got fear going on, and I hurt, because we already know. And we've been down that rabbit hole. The difference is we know how to get out. And what I'm hiding can never be healed. As long as I'm hiding, I'm not healing. But it seems to be the more transparent I get, as uncomfortable as that can be, the quicker I get better. And there's been many times on this journey where I felt I was being way too transparent. I felt way too vulnerable. And I felt like I was in a really dark spot at my weakest. Not only physically weak, but emotionally at my weakest. Feeling real brokenness all over me. And it's in those spots that turn out to be sacred, because that's where I find God's strength and God's light and God's power and God's mercy. As long as I think I'm okay and I'm doing good and I'm floating along on my self-reliance, I don't really need a God or AA or you, because I'm doing the work. But God will corner me and create an environment for a guy like me where the only place to turn to is back to this God. And I'm so grateful for that. I don't have a God who counts 1 + 1 = 2. And if I broke this law, I'm banished. My God doesn't operate that way. My God is a merciful God. There's a great story I heard years ago from a sponsor. It's about this guy who goes to his best friend and says, Joe, I've screwed this up for years. I've done terrible things. A lot of them I was in a blackout and don't remember. Can you help me recall all the terrible things I've done? And his friend starts rolling off a list, 15, 20, 30, 40 things he's done. That same guy goes before his God and he says, Father, I've screwed this up royally, and a lot of it I don't remember. Can you tell me the crazy and bad things I've done? And God's reply is, I don't remember. God doesn't hold a grudge. And I share a lot of this because I got to really experience this and walk this out, completing amends. I was experiencing these God winks along the way, and things were getting different, and my ground was getting more solid. My legs were under me a lot stronger, and my point of view was starting to shift on a lot of things. What I thought was true wasn't true. And I had these new awakenings. But something happened as I entered the world of the Spirit. I'm making this list in step 8, yeah? And I'm praying for willingness to make amends to every single person on that list. I made a list of all persons who had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So it's not for me to say on step 8, I'm going to go there and not go there. That's not what step 8's about. And there were people from very funky walks of lives, dangerous people. Some people were relatives. So it ran the gamut on the personalities on this list. And my job was not to say, I'm not going there, but I'll go there because that's easy. I think I'll make amends to the ex-girlfriend I broke up last week so we can get cute again tonight. I'll do this right away. You're all laughing because you tried that, I know. That's not my job. My job was to become willing to make amends to them all, which requires a spirit of willingness. And if I don't have a spirit of willingness in step 8, I don't have a 7-step problem. If I have a 9-step problem, I don't have an 8-step problem. What I have is a 1st-step problem. It's interesting in how it works. It talks about remember. And here in 8 and 9, they talk about remember and reminding ourselves because we might forget. So I need to go back to this powerful willingness to go to everyone on that list and be willing to go with hat in hand and make amends. And that's what I did. I got most of my 8-step out of my 4th-step, but not all of it. A lot of people were written on that list that didn't even appear in my 4th-step. But I went through, some people do a 4th-step and do a harms cause list right in there. We were brought up a little different. We went back and looked at the 4th-step and then create a harms list, which is what I did. And there were a lot of them on my 1st-step, on my first 4th-step. A lot of harms caused. In fact, when I went out the first time, I remember I made a little over 200 direct amends. Yeah. My sponsor's here.
Sounds like me in my first week of recovery.
Exactly. So I began to pray, and I had this list, and I created this list of names and institutions. Institutions, the IRS, the police department, things like that. Board of Education, the U.S. government, the Catholic Church. I mean, lots of institutions, medical community that I gossiped and slandered or did physical harm to, loitering and vandalism, things like that, along with a whole list of people. And I created this list, and my sponsor says we're going to now pray for willingness to make amends to everyone on that list. Because the willingness I get doesn't come from me. Nothing comes from me. It comes to me. And I had to go to God for the spirit of willingness, because there's some heavy lifting here, to go see people on that list. And that's what I began doing. And what I did was I just went through my list and took a handful of names and stopped praying for willingness to go see these people. I also had to work with a spirit of forgiveness, too, if I still smarted for some of the things I thought they did to me. And I began. And I'm praying for willingness to make amends to everyone on the list. I take a few names. I don't know if they were going to show up or not, but that's what I did. There were some people on that list I learned from step 9 that if I went to them, I'd cause more harm. So I prayed for them because I couldn't go to them. So I began getting this list together, and I'm praying. And I remember that there was someone on that list. The 9th step talks about how to approach the man we hated will arise. I had one of those. I think a lot of us, I've done enough of these where I can safely say we all probably have a man or woman on that list that we still hate. We're still angry with. After a 4, 5, 6, and 7, and I had that. And this landlord, I was renting an apartment from him. And I trashed the place. I brought the Bowery into this little studio apartment in Brooklyn. And it's all sorts of unsavory characters showing up at all hours of the night. I was borrowing money from the wrong people, and they showed up when I almost knocked my door down. If they would have got to me, I would have been in a lot of trouble. And it was like that. And the landlord had a wife, a daughter, and his wife was pregnant. And this guy was working and going to school at night, trying to make a life for him and his family. And all I can think of is the day he threw me out and the terrible things he said to me. There's a lot of activity in this room tonight. Jesus, it's like a train station. Padlock that door and nobody moves. So how to approach the man we hated will arise. I'm sitting in a restaurant, and I was dating my ex-wife. And I knew when I saw that guy's name on my list, I'm not going. I'm thinking of what he did to me, what he said to me, how he threw me out in the street. He called me a drunken, junkie, low light, things like that. And how dare you? I was. And out on the streets I went. So I'm sitting in some restaurant one night, and I look across the restaurant, and this landlord is standing there, talking to a buddy of his. And he's eyeballing me from across the room. And I was so uncomfortable. When your forehead starts to get sweaty and you can feel your face pulsating from the blood rushing to your head. And I'm embarrassed and I'm humiliated. And I got to get out of there. And so I left. I didn't order anything. I had a soda coming and I left. And the lady I was with said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't want to talk about it. I just got to get out of here right now." And I called my sponsor and I told him what happened. I was not free yet. I was praying for willingness to make amends to everyone on that list. And God gave me a mustard seed of willingness, but I'm fighting God on this one. I am not going to go see this guy. I am not going to get humbled by this guy, and he's not going to talk to me this way. And I was still in a place of resentment, and I was justifying it. And my sponsor gave me an assignment: write more inventory, and then pray to forgive him. See, I used to think if I forgave someone, it showed I was weak and cowardly. If I forgave someone, it meant they had leverage on me. If I forgave someone, it meant we were going to be buddies, and I didn't want to be buddy with him. But forgiveness is we're letting each other off the hook and creating a little space. So maybe I can go back with a different point of view and a different attitude and emotion towards this person, which was about to happen. So I went home and I started writing some inventory. And I wrote more inventory, and I shared it all with my sponsor. And my job was to pray for willingness to go to this guy and forgiveness towards this man. But what I started to do was save some money. I owed him a lot of money, a lot of back rent and things like that, damage to the apartment. And I prayed on a number, and God gave me a number. I think it was like $1,500 or something. And each week out of my paycheck, I'd put money in an envelope and tuck it in my drawer. And I kept praying. And one Sunday morning, I remember getting dressed, because I was told if you're going to go make amends, don't dress like you're going to go commit a felony or you're going to the gym. You go and represent with grace and dignity and respect. For Alcoholics Anonymous, for the God that I prayed to for my recovery and for that person I'm about to show up to. I didn't have much, but I had a little bit, so I got dressed. And as I was getting dressed, I realized, I'm getting dressed like I'm going to go give a talk or something. And I got in the car and I headed towards this guy's house with all the money I had. And I rang the doorbell, and his wife was surprised to see me. She says, "Come on in." And I sat down. This guy was still pretty stoic at best. He shook my hand. He says, what's going on? She says, you look wonderful. What's going on? And I says, I'm sober. I'm not sick anymore. And I belong to a place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And part of that is making this right. And I've harmed you and your family. I owe you financial restitution. She started to cry. And I put the money on the table, and I explained to them what I'm about and why I'm there, and we had this wonderful conversation. And I asked, is there anything I can do to make it right? She says, no, what you're doing right now is great. And we began to talk a little bit. She said to me, we knew you were sick. My husband and I would see you walking out in the middle of the night with that television your dad bought you. And my dad would bring me clothes in the garment bags. He felt if I got dressed, I'd feel better about myself and I wouldn't lead this awful life. And I used to walk out. She saw you walking out with the garment bags and the boxes of shoes and the food he bought you. I sold everything. If I could have carried out the refrigerator, I would have sold that. You know what that's like, being in that life. And she says, we don't know what to do. We didn't have the heart to call the police on you because we knew you were sick. She says, the thing that troubled us is we know a little bit about your dad and the type of person he is. She says, but he would come here and ring our bell with fear in his eyes and say, have you seen my son? I can't find him. And we told him the truth. We haven't seen Peter in a few days. He hasn't come home. If he comes back, please tell him to call his father. And when she told me that, I realized something, the damage I had done, not only to them who I was making amends, but how that has tentacles, how many people were leveled because of my alcoholism. See, I can go and make financial restitution for you for taking your money, but I don't realize that external amends I'm making, if you will, has an internal hurt that takes sometimes years to heal. I had to walk this out. The sermon was the walk, not the talk. And I didn't want to go see this guy, but something indeed miraculous was about to happen to me when I left their house, because we hugged and we had some handshakes. They wished me well, and out the door I went. And I remember I had to walk down about 10 steps from the main entrance to the house. And my car was parked down the block. But I don't remember much of it. I've shared this story from a million podiums, and it never does it justice. Nor should it, because when you have a God experience, there are no adjectives to adequately describe God. I mean, we say God, G-O-D, that's 3 letters. That does not sum up God. And if we polled everyone in this room, we all have a God story, and we put them all together in a box, it still falls way short of what God is. When I think of love, I think of love for my wife or love for my brothers and love for some dear friends. And it's enormous, but it's a drop in a bucket compared to the amount of love God has for us. So you can't even get a gauge on it. And when I was on the sidewalk walking down to my car, everything changed. These are things we can't plan. We chop wood and carry water. Ground fertile, God does the growing. And I remember this very clearly. I couldn't feel my shoes hitting the concrete. It was as if I was uplifted, if you will, off the concrete. I'm sure I wasn't, but that was the feeling. I remember I felt like I was wrapped up because I could see this yellow and white light. I was in the cocoon of this light, and my eyes fill up with tears of incredible joy, euphoria almost. There was no time and space. And I remember looking back on it, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm having an experience. I can't wait to get to a meeting and tell someone about it. None of that was around. I've heard a lot of these shows, we get taken to another place. And we get to experience even a mustard seed of God. And the ground was fertile. And I don't remember walking back to my car. Other than that, I don't remember putting the key in the car. I don't remember the drive back to my apartment, which was about 15, 20 minutes away. I do remember putting the key in the door And there I was. I'd never been the same, knowing that I'm known by my Creator. It was an amends I didn't want to go make. I'm not going to go see this guy. I'm not going to do it. And a wise man, my sponsor, says, we need to pray for forgiveness and write some more inventory. You can't wiggle out of your own space, but God could have would if he was sought. And that's what I was doing, banging on God's door. I'm stuck with this thing. I still have anger and hate towards this man. Help me get free of it. It's unbelievable what happens to a successful prayer, that what I have is enough. An unsuccessful prayer, no matter what I have, it's never enough. When we're praying and the intent is pure and God knows when it is, we know when it is, great things happen. Things get pushed around. And the very things I don't want to go, I go, and incredible things happen to me. Like an NA meeting tonight.
You know we could fix this.
We have the promises in the ninth step. And when I studied the promises, something came to me one day. I'm very familiar with page 52 in the bedevilments. The promises are the opposite of our bedevilments. The promise is even the opposite of page 62, along with page 52, but they are clear evidence of what page 25, the great fact, talks about. That we've had deep and effective spiritual experience that revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows in God's universe. And the central fact of my life today is the absolute certainty of this God. Absolute certainty. There's no doubt anymore that God lives in a way in my life which is indeed miraculous. Absolute certainty. I'm not guessing. I'm not wondering. I'm hoping. I know. The way I know I'm standing behind this microphone tonight, I know my God's here with me and out there with you. Absolute certainty. The problem is I have a thinking mind that likes to make me not so certain. That's why I get a daily reprieve. I'm bending knees, going back to God, going back to God, going back to God. The great things that happen when we enter the world with the Spirit. So there were a lot of other people on this list. My dad, for example. And my sponsor didn't say me create a list of, I'm never going to go, I might go, I think I'm going to go, if I'm in a mood, I'll go. He didn't do any of that, and if you do that, fine. I wasn't brought up that way. Doesn't make it better or worse. He says, let God decide who you're going to go see. Your job, it says, just pray for willingness. In the big book, it doesn't say we make 3 different lists. He says, we're not going to go there. We just pray for willingness, and that's what I did. But he gave me a suggestion. He says, your old man has heard every apology from now till the end of time from you. Get out of jail, I'm sorry. Steal something, get caught, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. He's heard you've used those up. He says, what I'm going to suggest is you walk this out a little bit and let him see what God is doing in your life, what AA is doing in your life. So I took this suggestion as a command. Usually when my sponsor, I got a suggestion, I take it as a command. They're wiser and more enlightened. I'm not going to debate with that. I got my job back and I'm working with my dad. And so I did what AA's told me to do, get there early and stay late. So I get to work early and I find out my dad was there with my uncle and some of his friends, and they'd be in the diner reading the paper and having coffee. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. So what happened by going early, I'm meeting my dad at 6 o'clock in the morning, work starts in, and I got a couple hours with my old man hanging out. Now that he's gone, I cherish those moments. And work would end at 4 o'clock, but I wouldn't just walk out the door and get done around 3:30 and wait for 4. I'd keep working. I'd sweep up. I'd do something until the foreman said, go home, kid. I'd stay late because that's what AA taught me. I was saving a lot of money to pay my dad back. I owed him financial restitution, among many other things. And, you know, if I saved like $1 million, I'd still be shy of a few dollars to pay him back. It was like that. And one day I was with my dad having coffee, and I said, can I talk to you about something? I said, yeah, of course. My dad was great. If you were jammed up and needed to talk to me, he'd stop time. If you were close to his heart, he'd stop time to make sure you're okay. That was the type of guy he was. And he said, what's going on? I took the money out of the envelope and I put it on the table. What's this? And I began the approach. There's the approach, and then there's the amends when it's completed. The amends of, I've changed. I've been changed. And I'm willing to continue to change. That's how I can repair what I broke. Or make an attempt. And I began the approach of telling my dad, without dragging someone else, my job is not to drag someone through the mud. Most of them know. I got to be tactful. How would I want to be spoken to? And I began the approach of telling my dad about some of the damage I did and how I was really trying to make it right. And he saw me getting to work early and leaving late, and it's really unbelievable when you're sober. When I got paid, I still had money from the previous paycheck. This was incredible. And he knew it. I'd pick up a lunch tab. I'd buy coffee for everyone, and they're like, amazement. You know, it was like Houdini. How's he doing this? And I had a little checking account, a little savings account, and things like that. And I was showing up to work sober, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, not bloodshot and forgetful. And as I began to talk to my dad, he stopped me, put his hand up, he stopped me and pushed the money back to me. And he said something I'll never forget. And he said to me, all I ever wanted was my son back. He didn't want the money. And he went on to praise the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. My dad turned me over to you, and I'll tell you a quick story about that. He would never do that, the type of guy he was. I sat in 7 treatment centers that have this thing called Family Week, which is pretty scary. And the counselors would say, you know, Mr. Marinelli, you really need to do this with your son. And he would tell them, do not tell me how to raise my son. We knew a police officer, and the guy, you know, took me in a few times and was going to let me out through the back door. And he saw my dad, and he says, hey, Vic, your son, don't tell me how to raise my son. He'd go to war with somebody on how to raise his son, how to raise his boys. Don't do that. Don't go there. After I made that amends, my dad turned me over to you and says, just do whatever they tell you to do. My wife and I were talking about this on the way here. At my wedding, which is like an AA conference, I could have read the preamble instead of the vows, you know. We were there for a couple of days. It was everyone got there on Friday, the wedding on Saturday, went home Sunday, and it was pretty cool in Fort Lauderdale. And my dad, being my dad, would get down there at 5 o'clock in the morning, smoke cigarettes because his wife wouldn't catch him smoking cigarettes, and he'd have his cup of coffee. And the AAs would go out and, out into the yard, the courtyard, and every once in a while I see, oh, there's Joe's talking to my dad, there's Mary talking to my dad, there's Joe and Mary and Bill talking to my dad. He was holding court for 3 days. And I sat down with him one day, and he said, I can't believe that this is how he said, all these people were drunks. He says, they're incredible. The amount of respect they have shown me. Not one has walked by and not sat down and says, good morning, Mr. Marinelli, how are you feeling? And sat down, smoked a cigarette, had a cup of coffee with me, spent some time, and then left. And the next one would come out. So I can't wait to get down here to see who's going to come out through the door. Because that's what Alcoholics Anonymous does. The change that happens to us. And every one of those folks who came to that wedding were very close to my heart. It wasn't just, well, invite John and Mary. They all had, Pat was there. People who were close to me. All because I made an amends and God gave me new eyes and new ears and an awakened spirit. That's contagious. And although my dad never gets, till the day he passed, why I travel so much and why I'm always helping these other people, he didn't have to get it. But what he was sure about was that when he called me the next day, I was going to be sober. And you have to wonder, And part of my walking out amends is if I got invited to someone's house at 1 o'clock, I showed up at 1 o'clock. And I did what I did in AA. I helped clean up when the party broke up. And if I was late, I would call and say, I'm running late, like we do here. That's credibility, that's depth and weight in whatever we're doing. I was taught that in Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, when you start to wake up spiritually, you can't live any other way but that. There's responsibility, there's integrity that we find. We hit this gold mine of all of it. I dreamt about being that guy, and God gave me ability to be that guy, dependable and reliable. The same thing with my brothers and friends and old employers when I went back to them. There were some people I could not go back to. I couldn't go there and say, hey, I've done this and implicate other people. Our book is clear about that. And I couldn't go make some of those direct approaches. And there was money involved. So what I did was I started to donate money to charities because it's not my money. If I owe Joe $100 and I can't go because it's going to cause more harm in so doing, I don't go buy a new pair of sneakers with that 100. I put it in a poor box in church. I put an extra 20 in the AA basket, whatever it is. Quietly, I donate that money. That's what I was told to do, and that's what I did. And I'm wondering, where can I donate money? What kind of cause is out there? And one day I get in the mail something that was close to my heart, the men and women who served this country. And I got a thing called the Disabled American Veterans of America, something like this. Would you like to donate? And they send you a little envelope, and I said, thank you, God, there's my answer. And I think it would come once a month or something. For like 5 or 6 years, I would send money off, a $10 check, a $20 check. If I had extra money, I didn't send more because it was going to a good cause. That I'm sitting in my living room a free man because these people were called there and defended this great country. And so how could I give back to them? It was one of those ways. It was a charity. I still do that. I still give back to the universe. I ripped the universe off. Every day I was drunk and or high, I ripped off God's universe, and my job is to give back. That's why today I'm very good with homeless people. My wife and I are. I'll roll down the window and throw a 20 to them and talk to them. It's unbelievable when you speak to a homeless person, you say, what's your name? And they say, Joe, this is Marion, I'm Peter. That the world stops for a moment because someone has given them a little dignity for a brief moment. That's my amends back to the world, to the universe, I should say. And it pleases God because I'm being kind to one of his kids. I knew nothing about this before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the evidence of page 25 in our big book. The great fact and the central fact. It has come to fruition. A healthy tree will bear good fruit, and people can eat from the vine. What we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, we get an awakened man or woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, and the sponsees come and feed off of that, and they get well and they pass it on. I can't do that if I'm not in the world of the Spirit. How could I live now knowing how I lived then? I have a whole bunch of amends I should be making, but I settle for comfort instead. I'm not in the world of the Spirit. I'm delusional. I'm still walking around with yesterday dictating what I do today. I'm still seeing the world and hearing the world through what happened yesterday. I have not healed the past. How could I be healed now? How can I live now knowing how I lived then? And the ego is having free reign of me because it's seeking comfort. We'll get to it tomorrow. We'll get to it next week. We'll get to it next month. They don't remember it was a long time ago. I don't want to open up Pandora's box. I don't want to go there. I'm going alone when I'm doing that. God says, let me go in for you. I'll clean this up for you. Just give me permission. And then sometimes I found this. The same way sin will always find me, so will the truth. And sometimes they show up together. And the truth will always find me. Like sitting in a restaurant, about to have dinner, and there's my old landlord. It found me. I was not a free man. The last time I checked, and that might change in an hour from now, I don't know. But I have no outstanding amends that I'm consciously aware of that I need to be making right now. That might change, but right now it's a clean slate, right now. And I emphasize right now because anything can happen. Question I was asked by a gentleman who helped me a great deal. He's passed on from California. He says, do you think completing amends has anything to do with you drinking or not? I had to think about that. I have unfinished amends. Good chance I'm going to pick up a drink again because I'm still living in the illness. But what I'm conscious of right now, I don't have any outstanding amends. Maybe I'll stay sober because I'm entering the world of the spirit. It says most alcoholics owe money. I owe the planet money. Everybody owed money to. People I shouldn't even be in the same area code with. Creditors, all of it. I remember the first time a bill collector called, and they used to be really mean in the old days. And there was a barking match between me and this guy, and I called my sponsor, you need to call him back and make amends. How am I going to do that? Well, there was a number on a letter, and I called, and it goes into a service, and I got the supervisor, and I said, listen, I'm a member of AA. I just barked back at one of your employees because I owe money, and I need to make that right. I said, I don't have this kind of money, but can we work out a deal? To my surprise, she says, how much can you send each week? I said, how's $15? She says, good, let's do it. I don't have to turn it to Al Pacino to do this. Okay, great. And I start to lose my fear of creditors. You know why? Because God is that big. I'm not that good. I don't have a college education. But God is that great. He'll take me to it and through it. Or give me a detour. But I need to rely upon this God. Especially here in this, and when we're down here in step 9, step 8, and step 9, creating this list. Listen, when I'm writing this list, I'm looking at some of these things going, how am I going to do this? I don't even know where these people are. This is pre-internet. We can basically find anyone now. How do I find these people? So I write down the name, harm caused, phone number, address, or question mark, and go to God. Instead of going to Google, I went to God. God works. It's unbelievable. I'll tell you how God works. The amends are in His time and His way, not my time and my way. I was at a treatment center 7 times in Amityville, Long Island. And I went over the wall one day. Well, I went over a little bush. It wasn't a wall, a little bush about that high. And I said, I'm out of here. And they would take us from the treatment center across the yard into a fitness center, which is unbelievable. You got junkies, winos, and crackheads detoxing, and they wanted us to work out. And we almost killed each other on a treadmill. It was messy. But so I had the plan while they're walking across going this way, I'm going that way. And that's what I did. And this guy, John, gives a run after me. I found out later on he was literally a marathon runner. He could have ran to Philadelphia and got me. But I'm running and I'm detoxing and I can't breathe. I'm about to have a heart attack. And I get to the gate. And he says, Pete, please don't leave. They're not allowed to hold you or grab you. They get sued for that. And he's, don't leave. Please don't do this. Just come back. We'll work it out. And I F-bombed him from here to Timbuktu. And out the door I went. When I came back to treatment, because we always wind up back, my good time lasted about 20 minutes. I got $40 on me, and in 10 minutes it's gone. Now what do I do? Well, you ever drive down Federal Highway, you see the guys or the girls walk with the luggage. There's an AMA, there's an AMA. They're calling mommy tonight. They said, John almost got fired because of your shenanigans. He got written up by HR. And he was in trouble because he was responsible and one of the patients took off. It's a big thing. I don't really care. I'm not interested in this. I don't care. I get sober. I can't. And he was on my list. And I need to go see this guy, John. So I would call up the hospital. It was a private psych hospital with a treatment center in it. My mom was there like a billion times. And they said he's on vacation. He took a sabbatical. He doesn't work here anymore. It's his day off. We'll leave a message. I'm getting this type of stuff. My sponsor, stop. It's not God's time. Leave it alone. Just keep praying for willingness. We okay? We need some water back there. You okay? You good? Okay. Okay. My talks have that effect on people. So just fall out of chair. Okay, you're good. And so I'm working for my sponsor in the business I'm in now, and he had me do some marketing in the Northeast region, which I hated every minute of it. I felt like Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. But I says, where do you go back to my alma mater, which is a treatment center for me. And I make the trek from New Jersey, Union, New Jersey, to Amityville, Long Island. That's a long drive. So I'm anticipating traffic in about a 2-3 hour drive. And lo and behold, I get there like 2 hours early for my scheduled appointment. So I'm not going in 2 hours. I look desperate. I look like an idiot. I look like a novice. I am not going in. God says, no, you're going to go in now. I grab my duffel bag. I'm walking in. I'm saying, what am I going to do? I'm 2 hours early. I look like a fool. Who's walking out is John. He recognized me. He says, I just came in to pick up my check. He said, I work scattered hours. I'm not regular like I used to be, but I wasn't going to be here this week. I just came to get my check. I said, okay, thank you, God. I said, you have a minute for me. And I began to talk to him, make amends. What can I do to make it right? He says, I'm thrilled you're in the business. I'm thrilled you're sober 17 years. 17 years to make this amends. He gave me the biggest hug. And I said to him, you're still running? And he started laughing. And he wished me well. Done. There was a young lady I dated when, puppy love when you're 16, 17 years old, and the parents are planning the wedding. And I trashed through her life because I was married to whiskey already. I was married to non-conference approved dry goods. I was into the music scene, and there's no such thing as fidelity in that life, for me anyway. And not only broke her heart, I trashed through her parents' life. See, when I make amends, I got to realize there were people around that person that got infected by me and affected. And I just prayed for willingness and prayed for her, and I didn't know where to reach this lady. Well, I had just moved down here, and I just got on social media. I was on social media a short time, and I get a message. Is this Peter Marinelli from 70th Street, the street I grew up on? I says, yes. Oh, my God, I thought you were dead. I recognize the name. Where have you been? She's on my list. So I said, I need to talk to you. Is it okay? She says, yeah. I called her up, and I said, listen, I've been sober this long now. And I began the approach, and I started to have this phone call and making amends. And she says, what do you mean you're an alcoholic? Mm-hmm. I haven't encountered someone like this yet, right? So what do you mean you're an alcoholic? So I'm telling her about alcoholism. She says, you mean you can't drink? I said, no, I can drink. I just can't stop. And she says, I knew it. She wasn't even interested in the amends, and she was interested in something else. So I knew it. I said, what? My husband, he has everything you just described. In fact, when I try to take the bottles away from him, he gets violent. He's beat me up. He's ruined the house. Would you want to talk to him? This is what happens. I make amends here, I'm directed there. I make amends there, and I'm directed here. I said, absolutely. When can I call? She says, how about tomorrow? I'll talk to him tonight. My phone rings the next day. Please don't call. I told him about it. He wrecked the house. He did it again. I called the cops. It's done. And we wished each other well. That took 20-something years to make. But it got made. In God's time, it's God's way. I got to get out of it because it's almost 9:30. I will tell you this. I'm so grateful I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to walk into a room and scan the room, who's here that I don't want to see. I've been set free. There was a great man who said something for a great cause, and he says, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I can recite that because it's true for a guy like me.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful. That's all I got.